Good evening, everyone.
Hello, Eric.
I guess it must be very early for you, Kisara.
Not that early, just 8 a.m.
Okay, that's nice.
We'll give a few minutes for people to continue to gather. I know some of the regular participants will be joining late because of a conflicting call oriented around organizing the 119 meeting. For anyone that's here, please share your videos so we have as close to a round table meeting as we can get, but do remember that this is being recorded and will be posted to YouTube.
We'll be famous.
We are already, right? So
It's exactly right.
an easy one, I know, but it's being late for me.
Oh, famous in the IETF and famous might not be.
So the join rate is slowing. As I mentioned, we do have several people that will be here, but a little bit late because of the conflicting meeting. Thanks everyone for taking time out of their day to come have this conversation. It always helps the tools team with priority, and we really appreciate the interest in watching what's happening, having the opportunity to get real-time feedback on what's going on. I would like to introduce our new senior developer, Sango Na. Is based in New Zealand, working with the IETF tools team. I'm sure when Jay has an opportunity to join, he will also want to mention some things. And I think I'm going to go ahead and jump into the agenda at this point. Does anyone have any last minute agenda bashes? Everybody knows where the notes are. They've seen the framework for today's discussion. Is there anything missing in particular from that we need to focus on? All right, so we'll jump in. The first thing that I wanted to note, we are still working fervently on moving into the new IT infrastructure. As mentioned at the call last month, we've shifted into a sprint-based mechanic for focusing progress and advancing our progress. Hello, Michael. This is working out well for us on accelerating the progress and focusing what we need to do, but it is not making it easier to make a roadmap to completion available to the community. I'm still struggling with how to build such a thing. There's just too much unpredictability in front of us to put anything sensible together so far. So I'm planning to continue what I have been doing, sending periodic updates to Tools Discuss and reporting in venues like this on the progress. If anybody has any suggestions or complaints, please let me know about the visibility into what we're doing. At a very high level, we're still in a proving stage. We do have a few applications in production already. Author Tools has been in production since late January. The 3 major wikis have been in production on the new infrastructure since the very beginning of February. We've gotten very positive community feedback on the behavior of those applications in production. We're at a point for most of the rest of the applications of proving that we can get the databases and persistent storage in place. We are not yet to the point for the really difficult applications to move, the data tracker and the primary IETF web server. We hope to get those to a point where we have versions of them in staging soon that we can start doing load testing on and making sure that the infrastructure is going to provide the experience that the community is used to, or preferably even better experience than what's currently deployed. As I noted in the notes, part of why we are at this stage of the game and not having more things into production is that we went down a path originally in December and early January that involved using Fargate as the fabric backing Kubernetes for the things that we were deploying into Kubernetes. And we learned some things and decided to change direction. And that direction change involved reworking some of the infrastructure that we've been building to deploy, adding a little bit of time. But it was a necessary change to make and a necessary thing to learn. And the last thing I have in this section is that we're very rapidly approaching the part of the calendar where changes to things like the data tracker will disrupt the efficacy of IETF 119, and we will be being careful not to cause that kind of disruption as we're moving things going forward. And that might mean a lot of things end up just moving forward into staging and having actual production deployment happen immediately after the meeting. But there are still several things in flight that perturbations would not disturb the meeting at all, such as moving the Trust's website, that will continue in the meantime. Hello, Jay. I gave a brief introduction to Songho at the beginning of the call. Is there anything that you wanted to add to that? Okay, thank you. All right, so that's the high level description of the infrastructure transition. I've got some more detail down in the FYI section of the notes on the individual services that are being transitioned. Let's wait for that section and talk about the individual services. I know Michael had asked a question in email that I had not answered yet that we can cover in the call. But unless somebody has something they'd like to ask about the general framework for the infrastructure transition, I'd like to move on to Mailman 3. All right, not hearing anything. So this last weekend was a very intense flurry of activity. We really thought that we were going to be deploying Mailman 3 up until for those of us in North America, mid-morning on Sunday. So about just the day before, we found a set of things that in testing that showed that we needed to address before we actually made the transition. And in the process of pulling at the threads that exposed, we found other things that we're addressing across the week, this week. The easiest one to understand is that the mechanic that we use across our Mailman 2 lists to allow someone who has a data tracker account, who has posted an internet draft, has subscribed to on some other Mailman list, to be able to post to any list. And this the global whitelist mechanic. This is the thing that we count on to allow ADs discusses to flow through to any working group list, for example. Just doesn't work in Mailman 3. The underlying gearing did not make the transition into the Mailman 3 world. The developer that we have working at Sirius on this, that's closely involved with the Mailman 3 project, is building out the extensions to Mailman 3 that are needed. They will end up back in the Mailman 3 source tree at some point. We had some other smaller issues, larger issues that we are also working through, just making sure that we have the plumbing through postfix and post-confirm in Mailman 3 correct. An actual full end-to-end test of a message flowing from Mailman 3 through post-confirm as it does its rewriting half of its job, to demonstrate before we make the transition. And I have a very active session running with the developers at Sirius during the week. This week, we'll be having a major checkpoint at the end of the week on Friday. I had signaled to the community that we were going to try to do this again next Monday. I was reminded today that next Monday is a U.S. holiday. The Secretariat would not be around. So I'm planning to nudge that forward to Tuesday morning instead of Monday morning, so that we have more people available as the transition happens. So, all right. Anybody have any other questions about what was going on with Mailman 3?
Just two questions, Robert, if you don't mind. For my own migration of my own Mailman list to Mailman 3, I noticed a very performance drop. Did you see the same thing happening, or?
So I haven't seen performance tests. So we've just been focusing on functionality tests. Sirius has moved several other organizations through Mailman 2 to Mailman 3. So
that is correct. We have, well, what's correct is we've moved a number of organizations, some very large indeed. There are different performance profiles, but as Robert is saying, we're not at that point at the moment. We're functioning on we're focusing on the functionality, translating the existing plumbing over, and we will be, of course, looking at the performance once we have got it live. And we expect a period of tuning on that one.
Thank you.
So just as a point of interest, as we were exploring the thing that's going to come next, which is the move of the entire mail processing system onto the new infrastructure fabric, some of the baseline parameters for understanding this, we are running at just under 5 million messages a month being emitted by our current mail processing system. So Any other questions? Shall we move on?
Can't
All
hear
right.
you, Jay.
I'm sorry, Mark.
I was saying I can't hear Jay here. Could see his lips moving, but couldn't hear.
Your audio is not coming through, Jay. The infamous too many mute buttons. All right. So the next item that we have to call attention to is that there is a new IEB website in production. It made it into production yesterday. That is the culmination of several months' work. Cindy, I don't think is on the call. Yeah, she is. There's
I
Cindy.
am here. My internet is just a little bit wonky, but yes, thank you to everyone who helped with this, you know, Greg and Kasara and Robert and Liz. So happy that this is in production now.
Does IEB.org work or just www.ieb.org?
IEB.org should be taking you to www.ieb.org. If it's not, then we have a bug. All right, Kasara, grab that one and address it, please.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, looks like it doesn't work.
Confusingly, www.ieb.org seems to actually set the location ID to ieb.org, so you think it thought it worked. I think that's JavaScript, but anyway, you saw it doesn't work.
We'll follow up on it. Thank you. All right, the next item I've got, I was hoping we'd have Lars for. We don't have Lars, but I do see Roman. Feet clarity seems to have stalled, and I believe that it is stalled primarily with the IESG. Roman, does that match your perception of where we are with it? This is the banner that would be added to internet drafts in the data tracker and to RFCs in the data tracker.
I was under the impression that we resolved all of that.
Is Greg here? I think that there was still an outstanding question about the normative looking reference to Warren's draft explaining that.
Okay. If that is the case, then it is stalled with me. I did not appreciate that there was something else to clarify. I thought after we got the second approval from all the stream managers that we were good to go. Greg, should we take that offline? I mean, do you know what words we're talking about?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I'll send you an email.
Okay, we can tee it up worst case at the formal on Thursday.
Okay.
The ISG.
All right, thank you. The next topic I have for discussion is to note a conversation that's really taken off on Tools Discuss, mostly because of an unintentional bug that came in with the release of Feet RFC last month. The page for documents, for draft-like documents in the RFCs derive their treatment from the way drafts were treated. Provide a link to reach the interested parties in the draft alias link for drafts was just document name at IETF.org, and that slipped into document name at IETF.org for RFCs. So there are these links, email links on the RFC pages that are showing up right now that look like, RFC 8989 at IETF.org. That wasn't intended. We have a PR that's in progress. It'll be part of the next release that's going to take that back to pointing at the draft string for the last draft, for the draft that became an RFC if there was a draft, and there would not be any link at all in the data tracker for the moment for RFCs that didn't come from drafts. And we're going to let this conversation play out about whether these aliases should exist and what domain they should have, and all of these. There's a long and rich thread that has started around this. So. And if anyone has anything that they wanted to throw in here on the call, that's fine. But I think that most of this discussion belongs on the list at this point. All right. From a FYI perspective, I'm going to read through some of these, this time going fairly quickly. We did deploy a post-confirm change that changed the envelope for aliases at the very end of January. This seems to have made the draft and group aliases far more useful to people. Delivery into the major mail silos appears to be mostly working at this point. So a lot of the concerns with the utility of these aliases seem to have been addressed with that particular change. Author tools, I'm just going to start going through these and let people call out if they want to talk more about them. I don't know that there's really more to say than what was written about author tools. For analytics, I know, Michael, you had asked a question about how we're deploying into the Fabric and why we ran into trouble. This is a artifact of that particular application. It self-maintains. It has PHP. It is a PHP application. It has PHP code inside that upgrades itself and leaves artifacts around that need to be captured if you're going to deploy again as code. And we will come back around to capturing that so that we can deploy that as code going forward. But for the short term, we're moving into, deploy once. Yang catalog is worth talking about a little bit here, Eric. We have our instance of Yang catalog up in DigitalOcean. Joe Clark has spent quite a bit of time addressing the gaps between what should have been just redeploy configuration of code as code from what we had from Pantheon that weren't actually there. He's taken notes. We will eventually move that back into a period into a state where we can try to deploy it again and have everything work straight off the bat. We're still finding issues with it. The issue that Benoit reported with the tree display appears to be environment variables that aren't being set. We're going to go work on that when we get time to do so. This Yang catalog remains not, it has a lot in front of it from the development team focusing on the infrastructure transition, keeping the data tracker going. And a lot of the load has been landing on Joe, and Joe notes that, his availability to that is low, and having other informed people coming in from the Yang catalog community to help would be useful.
Note taken, Robert, on this one. It's a pity because last week there was a big Cisco event, right? So when Joe and myself were busy full time, I met Joe over there, and we have he did not talk about this to me. So anyway, I will try to liaise with him this week.
Awesome.
I think the code base is sound. It's more the environment settings, right, to bootstrap it correctly. Crossing fingers.
And it was interesting to note that Benoit was surprised.
I read his email. I was assuming he was in the loop, and I should have checked. So if Benoit, you read this, kind of my bad. And he lives 10 kilometers away from my place, right? So he can come to my home and hit me.
All right. So for the rest of the development projects, I will call out before we run through these and ask questions that velocity for bug fixes and new features for the data tracker and other services is down. We know it's down. We're focusing on the IT transition work. It will come back up after the IT transition work. And, you know, it would be nice if we could do both at once, but we're pushing the resources to the limit of our ability to push. So, Jennifer, is there anything in particular on the data tracker that you want to call attention to?
I think the main thing that just we've changed a few of the periodic tasks for updating things from running on cron on the IETF to running as celery tasks, and this is in preparation for operating in a cloudy environment. I think as far as I can tell, the tasks are working as they did before, but they are perturbed. So if anything seems out of whack, send us a note.
And these are things like draft expiration and the update of the email aliases and the things that would typically happen overnight that you would see mail being emitted for.
One thing to note is that over the weekend, tasks that normally ran at midnight, or for the last few days, tasks that normally ran at midnight Pacific ran at midnight UTC. None of them should, it will change the time of an email, but I don't think any of the things that ran were sensitive to the time. So that should be back to status quo. But
yeah, we've shifted it to mirror Pacific until we have made the transition into the new fabric so that we aren't having to make that adjustment when we're comparing old and new behavior in staging versus production. But once we are in production, we do intend to move for all of our services for the machine's idea of time to become UTC. So just universally across all of the applications. The presentation layer will still do things like what the data tracker does now, present people in time information in their time zone of choice. So Kassar, do you have anything that you want to highlight about the bib XML author tools, XML RFC, or anything else? All right. Nick or Ryan, anything on your fronts that you'd like to call particular attention to? All right.
May I assume that I think it was into Nick's place, the new RPC editor, is it RPC editor or RSC editor?
It is intended to say RPC editor at the moment. So we are, as part of the RPC tools modernization project, building an editor for the editors that work for the RPC to use. We are keeping it in mind as a goal that this would eventually also become something useful for community members to use. But right now we are focusing on the people that are working for the RPC use cases.
Thank you.
All right, checking Zulip to make sure. Karsten says that he would like for us to mention issue 1100. Kassar, do you want to talk about that at all?
I'll put a link to the issue. I think it's still in. I don't think it's still complete to make a change, because what I'm seeing is still under discussion. What it should be for different references.
Yeah, so for those that aren't familiar, this particular issue is about the format of sub-series references in RFCs going forward. We had a change that we made to XML to RFC that would wrap sub-series with the sub-series identifier and then all the constituent RFCs for that sub-series with links in the wrapper to the sub-series metadata page, and then links for all of the constituent RFCs to the RFCs. The RPCs has concerns about how this looks for sub-series that only have one RFC in them, and are working out requirements for what we should do for the different cases, sub-series, that a thing like a BCP or an STD, that it only has one comprising RFC versus one that has a dozen. They're building out the requirements for what they want to see, and then we will re-implement.
Yeah, I think the interesting observation here is that the RPC work and the XML to RFC work are interlinked in a way that can be moving very slowly. So maybe that's something that requires some additional thinking going forward.
Well, at least it can move. So
yes, I'm not complaining that much. It's just I happen to have an RFC2B that is involved here.
Yep. Okay, I think we are to open discussion and any other business. If anyone has anything that they would like to discuss that we haven't jumped into already. Then I believe that we're done. Thanks, everyone.
This is the last call before the code sprint, right?
That is correct. Yeah, we'll have the code sprint. Typically, we cancel the tools call that happens immediately after an IETF because of people's travel and that we've all been together. I'm going to leave it scheduled for the moment, but because of the transition work, maybe there's a reason to get together and talk. But I'll give everyone a couple of weeks notice if we're going to cancel it. So, all right, let me check the chat one last time. All right, thanks everyone, and we'll see you online, if not at the meeting. We'll talk to you soon.